fired up.
Yeah, so
So,
we're live.
GBO, go back on.
That's right.
okay, looks like it's 2:32. I'd like to call this February 12th meeting of the Personnel Committee to order, please. First order of business would be roll call.
Danny Alves,
Here.
Larry Klon,
Here.
Mark DeWitt,
Here.
Bob Edens,
Here.
Dawson Fields,
Present.
Tom Kern,
Here.
Sybil Von Trent. Mr. Chairman, we have 6 members present constituting the quorum.
Okay, let the record reflect that we have 6 and 7 and good to go. Item number 3, approval of minutes from December 7th, 2018. Did everybody get your minutes?
I'll make a motion. Motion approved.
Okay, we have a motion approved by Commissioner Fields. We have a second? Second by Commissioner Edens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes of December 7th have been approved unanimously. Okay, let's get down into the meat of the meeting. We have our order of business, item A, Clerk and Master Holly James. Holly, would you want to talk to us?
No. Not real sure, again, why I'm here, but I am at a request, and so here, it's not gonna take us long, and I apologize for having it the second time. That was sort of, oops, sorry.
That's all right.
Basically, a little bit like I was here before, maybe somewhat different. As we discussed when I was here earlier, I've had 2 employees to retire. One retired December 31st and has been replaced, and then the other one retires March the 1st. And I have hired someone to replace her. However, the salary again, just as before, has become the issue. I have in my budget from the current employee $25,592. That's what the one that is there makes. I'm asking to keep the new employee at that level based on her years of prior service with the county. She had 13 years with the health department, 11 years, 11 months of which was county service. She was moved to a state employee after almost 12 years. And if you'll remember, that was back, I think it was something, he was starting to do buyout for state employees, asking them to leave or take buyouts and leave their positions. And her choice was either to take a buyout and leave her employment or to move out of county. And with a family here, she didn't want to do that. So she took a buyout and left the health department after 13 years. But she still is in the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. She still maintains that service, those years of service with the county. She's been a teacher's aide over at the city school, so she's also gained some years of service in her retirement system through that. So on that new salaries, well, I'm not sure I want to call it a salary scale. On that thing we have to look at, it says a new hire is supposed to be $23,537. Which again, I think's very low, too low, but I'm asking that I be able to hire her in at the $25,592 that I already have in my budget. It's not asking for any new money. It's giving, and in doing so, giving her credit for her 12 years of service with the county, which she really was told when she left the county. Originally, she was told that she would be able to get if she ever took a county job. But that silly new scale thing sort of has got everybody buffaloed.
Is this not what we approved last month?
That's what I said. It was a little. This is a different employee, a little bit different set of circumstances. Well, he had a BS degree in business and 3 years experience in a law office, and that's why I asked to bump him up to the 25. I'm asking to bump her up to the 25 from the 23 because of her 12 years of county experience, county service. And that's what I said. I think they decided that the last time and to ask me why I was there. But I still was told I might ought to come back.
How many employees you got?
4.
No, and I'm assuming by doing this, we're not jumping her ahead of anybody else. in your office.
No. See, we did that when we hired the last one. that was, I told you I was gonna have to go back and explain to the one he was going, he was gonna be working side by side with. She had 8 years experience, so 8 years over there, was gonna be making the same thing he was making day one. But under that pay scale, I had no choice. These two are coming in brand new, and they're gonna be making the same. They're gonna be pay grade 7 deputy clerks. And they do, I have 2 others who've been there 15, 13 years, somewhere around in there. One of them's 15, maybe one of them's 13, but they make higher. One of them's my chief deputy, and then and they make a little more.
They make higher because they're at different pay grades.
Yeah, well, they're both pay grade, one's pay grade 7, one's pay grade 8, but, when they set that, they got a little bit more for their pay grade, the years of service at that point, when they first put that scale in. So one, and then these, cost of livings that y'all gave up them a little bit, I didn't bring those salaries with me, but I think one of them's 25, and one of them's 27, or 26, and one's 27-ish.
Good.
Still not where it should be.
Danny, did that answer your question?
But basically, we're doing the same thing, Danny,
we
but
did last time.
I didn't know it was different.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Any other comments or?
I'll make a motion to approve if there's none.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor, Commissioner Fields, to approve the new hire on the salary scale at the same salary that the employee is going to replace. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
Thank you. Second by Commissioner Kern. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, you're good to go, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
She'll be appreciative. Thanks.
Okay, item B, County Mayor Jim Lee.
Well, mine probably won't take long either. So the ones that do the.
Turn your microphone on, Jim. There you go.
Good.
Yeah.
For the ones of you that are not familiar, we've had some changes at Laurel Run Park, and the gentleman working up there has quit. And what we're wanting to do is change it from where they live there and do away with that. And that comes at a little over $8,000 in benefits. What we're wanting to do is take the money there from our part-time position and put it into the full-time position for the new director that we're gonna hire. It'll be no new money, everything will be the same. So that's basically all we're wanting to do. What we're wanting to do is take him from step 7 to a step 8.
So you're eliminating the housing benefit
We are.
to slide that money over? to-
We will save money by doing that. Considerable amount of money.
You have a person in mind for?
We have a few applications.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Danny, you've been on that park board, you still on it?
Yes.
I mean, and you've been on, you was on it, as long as I know anywhere you've been on it.
Mr. Chairman, I put it before a motion to allow the mayor to agree on what he wants to do concerning this.
We've got a motion on the floor to allow the movement of that position to the next level up and eliminate the housing benefits. Do we have a second? Okay, second by Commissioner Edens. Any other discussion? You're right, it's gonna be quick. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you, Mayor. All right, I said, when I was elected chairman of the Personnel Committee and people were sort of asking what our responsibilities would be, that I would try and put together something in writing that kind of outlines what we as a Personnel Committee are responsible for. There's a lot of things in there, and it was mailed out to you earlier. This particular document, I found through CTAS as a suggested outline for what a Personnel Committee would be. I personalized it to Hawkins County, didn't change a whole lot on it. I don't know if you've had a chance to read through it and look at it. Does anybody have any particular comments on it that they want to make? All right, Commissioner Edens.
On the last page,
Yes.
it says meeting when possible personal via telephone. When we were in Murfreesboro, they told us to not do telephone. Does that not apply to this, or is that? I'm not-
This may be an older document, before they did that. Right here where it says members of personnel committee are expected to attend each committee meeting when possible or in person or via telephone. I would have no objection to striking, the via telephone.
They just said that when we were down there.
Okay. I did not know that part of it, but does anybody have any objection to striking the or via telephone? No.
I think it needs to be taken out.
Okay. We'll strike that and, we'll get a clean copy to everybody. Any other comments on this? It's really not, controversial or anything. It's just kind of what we're laid out to do. I'd like to see every committee have something.
Well, thank you for doing it, 'cause we all need to have, everybody needs it.
Yeah.
You've done a good job, thank you for doing it. You said you were going to do what you did.
That's what I'm trying to do.
That's really, I mean, I think you're doing it.
I don't know if it's the personnel committee's responsibility to do it for each committee, or it's within that committee. Yeah. Yeah. Do I want to, or do I have time to? That's the thing. Let me kind of chew on that for a while and see, but we do need to kind of get word to all the other committees that we put together guidelines and something for us to go by, and we'd like to see theirs. If, if their chairman, wants to take it on, that's up to them, and otherwise we can come up with this for just about all of them. It's a little time consuming, but it's not that bad. Okay. I guess, let's entertain a motion to adopt this guideline as amended, as what the personnel committee should be responsible for.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, motion by Commissioner Fields, do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that.
All right, second by Commissioner Clontz. Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, personnel committee guidelines adopted. And Sarah, you've got a copy to put in the book,
I do.
correct? Okay.
Would you like to prepare the new one with, or via telephone removed? Or would you like to?
Did I send it to you in a Word document?
I think so,
Okay.
I can do that,
If you want to just take that out and put the new one in there, it'd be fine.
and I will send that out to all the community members
Okay.
later.
Good deal. Send that out with the minutes or whatever.
Okay.
All right. Item D, the other, it's waiting period for new employee health insurance coverage. Let me background this a little bit. We had an insurance committee meeting the other day. Anybody here?
Yeah, that's true.
Larry was here, and Bob, you were here too, right? We listened to Michael Trout, who is our insurance broker / advisor, and he brought up the point that in some departments in the county, there is a very high turnover rate. And as it stands now, the county employee is eligible for, and correct me if I'm wrong, ma'am, but the county employee is eligible for insurance on the first of the month following their hire date. And now that could be real quick. If you're hired toward the end of the month and you come on the insurance program at the first of the month, that's real quick and you're eligible. But it also could be an entire month. And apparently what's happened is the employees and department heads and such want to get the cards out to the employees and, get them ready for the insurance. And in a lot of cases, they are using the insurance before they're actually eligible, and in some cases, they're using the insurance when they're eligible, but then they quit the job before we're able to take their first employee contribution toward the insurance. Did I state that
That's
correctly?
correct.
Okay. And it is costing us money because at that point, we can go after that employee, but we're not really gonna get anything. And so therefore, we're responsible for the county's portion and their portion, and perhaps any insurance bills, any medical bills that they've accumulated since then, in that short period of time. And I can understand that, they want to be able to use their insurance as quickly as possible, and it may not be intentional. It may be something that they don't know about, but it's costing us considerable money in the insurance fund, and it's also causing a lot of paperwork, both here and at the insurance company side of it, because they lag behind just a little bit, as far as, getting paperwork through and so forth, and you can understand Blue Cross Blue Shield is covered up with a lot of employee things. So we suggested at the insurance committee meeting to make the waiting period for the start of insurance coverage for a county employee 60 days. And it's spelled out in here on the back side that if an employee is hired on the first day of the month, insurance will become effective on the first day of the month following 60 days from that date. If they're hired any day after the first day of the month, the effective date would be the first day of the month following 60 days. So it's explained here in a couple of different examples, but basically there is a Public Health Service Act, Section 2708, that says there is a maximum 90-day waiting period for healthcare coverage. So we'll be between that 60 days and no longer than 90 days, regardless of what the case would be. And in that period of time, then we don't incur as much cost as we did, as much paperwork, as much confusion. So I kind of put together a draft resolution, and Alana helped me kind of flesh it out a little bit. Alana, is there anything you want to add to this?
I don't think so. I think what we discussed in the meeting and the narrative that you just read on the backside there is all we need.
Anybody have any questions, comments on this?
Are you guys, Jeff, Jim, Nancy, and Jim, y'all are department heads, or y'all are the ones that have the employees, y'all good with this?
I don't have any turnover problems, so.
That's what I was wondering, what's the turnover at you referring to, sheriff's department?
Sheriff's Department, mostly in the lower paying jobs in the sheriff's.
Sheriff's department, the county or something?
I'll be honest, I do hate to hire a new employee and tell them it's gonna be somewhere between 60 and 90 days before they're insured.
That's a tough thing to do, but if they have any knowledge of the way insurance works in the private sector, they should know that A, they've got a good deal at 70/30, and B, there's typically a waiting period, mostly for this kind of reason. And we just haven't done it, and I think it'll clean up a lot of the money that's going out of here unnecessarily.
I prefer 30 days.
Jeff, you and Jim, how are y'all with
I think it's great.
it? Yeah?
Mayor, you're thinking 30?
Okay.
Alana, what would 30, I think we talked about 30 at the
We
meeting.
kind of rolled that over a little bit, and in thinking about the times that you are actually hired in. If you're hired in on the first day, it's not gonna make any difference anyway. But if you're hired in on the 15th or the 20th or 29th, it's going to be a little bit more than 30 days.
And the other thing that was brought up, Michael Trout had done some research as far as where the sweet spot is in there for employees he thinks if he knows from statistics that if the employee stays 60 days, they're likely to stay. But if they don't, then that first 60 days is kind of their period of indecision.
And in that particular department is where we're seeing most of that, and sometimes they may last 2 weeks, and sometimes they may last 30 days, you know, but that's why we went with the 60 days to begin with, was to give them ample time to be sure that that was a suitable job for them.
And this doesn't affect anybody that's currently employed, anybody that's in the pipeline right now. The quickest we could get this implemented would be the March meeting, because we missed the deadline for the February meeting. But what do you all think about trying 30 days?
Mr. Chairman, what is the normal on the probationary period when you're a new hiree? I retired from Baldwin, and it was 90 days there, so it would have been 90 days before you would receive any insurance.
I don't know, do we have a probationary period for new employees?
By history, and I don't know if each department follows this, but by history, this office has said that you're within a 90-day probationary period. So that gives us an opportunity, and the employee an opportunity to decide if you're going to be acceptable. I know from my previous employer, we had a 90-day waiting period for any benefit that we had, in addition to being on a probation.
That's another whole issue that we are gonna have to address at some point as committees. There's really no standard set of personnel policies that each department in the county is using.
There is.
I'm sorry?
There is.
There
They're
is.
all on file in the clerk's office, each individual office. Can I speak a second
Sure.
on that? The way that the law is structured in county government, you've got to,
Turn that mic on.
Turn your mic on, please.
You're on the record.
That's what you get for speaking up.
and you know I'm just kidding with you, don't you?
Turn it green.
Turn it around, press it down, press the button.
The other button.
There you go.
When I bring it up there far. The way that the law is written in county government, if an office holder comes in, and the office holder decides that I'm not gonna have a personnel policy for, let me back up, the employees of county government work for the office holder of whichever office that they're elected to. Although a lot of your general public sees the county mayor as the head of everything, you know, he doesn't have any control over my employees or Jim's employees or Ronnie's employees or whoever. So what happens, under the laws, the employees, if the office holder comes in and says, I don't want to have a personnel policy, then the county has adopted an umbrella policy that is on file in the clerk's office. And that is to protect those employees if there's an office holder that comes in that says, I'm not gonna have. Otherwise, I've got a personnel policy, Jim's got one, each individual office holder's got one, and they're all on file in the clerk's office if you wanna see them. But everyone's got their own, to my knowledge, everyone's got their own individual personnel policy set up. But the umbrella policy that is voted on by you all, is to protect that employee if the office holder chooses not to fool with the personnel policy.
Well, that's good to know. We didn't think that was,
Well, I
Okay.
guess the way that we've looked at that in the past is that is a handbook, an employee's handbook, and it's not actually a policy that says you've got a 90-day waiting period, probationary period, or you can do certain things that would affect all employees. That handbook only basically affects that particular department, and that is correct, that they do work for that department head. But in effect, they work for the county as a whole, and the benefits that are provided should be the same benefit as everybody, and that is not spelled out in the handbook. Only things that are spelled out in the handbook are things like sexual harassment, drug-free workplace policy, family medical leave, you know, those those type things there, military leave, those are the things that are spelled out in that.
And those things are common across all of the offices.
Exactly. There may be a few things that might be a little different, that would pertain directly to a department, but basically they all say the same thing except for something that might be specific to a department.
Do you have in your policy
I would have to go
anything
back
that,
and look.
I'm sorry?
I would have to go back and look. The bylaw, the 4 things that have to be addressed in a personnel policy as far as is leave, wage and hour, discrimination, and drug testing.
Okay.
That's the 4 things that have to be addressed in a personnel policy. And then, of course, the rest of it would, if it's not addressed, then it would go back to like Ms. Roberts was saying.
So neither one of, in your book, in your personnel policy / handbook, and our handbook that covers if nothing's covered, there's nothing in there right now as far as a waiting period for insurance.
No, and there's also no probationary period, there's, you're an at-will employee,
Okay.
that is in there.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions on this? Do we want to present a resolution such as this one, or?
I'm good with whatever department heads, really. I mean, if they wanna do 60 days, they wanna do 30 days, whatever's easier on these guys and ladies, I mean, I'll back them, I mean, they're the ones that have to, you know.
The way I see it is 30 days would be easier to present to the employee, for sure, but is that gonna help the situation that we're in right now as far as just somebody turning over real quick and us
We do 60?
being responsible for the,
Is there any numbers, the gentleman spoke to us last time, like, is there more people at 30 than there is 60 that we could maybe look at and see?
I could, we can table this and I could get those figures from him as far as that goes.
Oh, when do they start dropping, when do they start
You
paying
said
return?
you stayed 60 days.
90 days.
A lot.
You have to be employed 90 days before you can come in.
But, Mr. Chairman, the other side of that, and I see the 2 sides of it, and the fact that if we are trying to entice someone or sell us on working for this county, then we're gonna lay out the benefits, we're all guilty of that. And talking about health insurance is a big thing, and that could entice that person to come. You might get in a situation where, you're handicapping me because I'm gonna have to wait, I'm gonna leave this job, go to this job, and I'm 60 days with no insurance.
Well, there's a
That's one
COBRA,
side. Yeah, I
there's
understand
a
that.
COBRA available in there.
Yes, but does that employee see that?
Hmm.
I'm just saying, whenever you're trying to do a hire, I think that we're all been guilty of throwing out all of our assets, and we have to offer that you should be working for this group here.
Okay.
That would be one side of it.
Hmm.
But yet I do understand the paperwork, and I will say one thing, I think that Michael Trout is very well qualified to make recommendations concerning.
He's always on top of it with answers and gets right back to you on things, but he's the one that brought this up, as I said, and it just kind of surprised me that there was no real waiting period other than the time between you were hired and the first of the month following. And evidently the turnover, especially in the sheriff's department, is huge for the lower paying jobs. They sign on to something, they don't know what they're signing on for. But I can go either way. I mean, I can talk to Mr. Trout and see if he has any firm facts and figures. We can go 30 days as far as that goes. It just, because it was a 90-day maximum, we just kind of picked in the middle.
Well, Mr. Chairman, since the problem is with the sheriff's department, can he set his own personnel?
Not for insurance, if it's covered. If they're on county insurance,
Okay.
everybody's covered, has to be under the same guidelines.
I was just, I heard something different, Mr. Thacker, but I understand what you're saying.
Well, he's got those 4 things that have to be covered, and the insurance waiting period is not. That's a program-wide, waiting period.
What does the average, you might ask a question,
Sure, go ahead.
what does the average, private sector business, what do? They do 30 days, 60 days, 90 days?
I'd say 90.
So why would, I guess my take would be, why would public sector employees expect to get anything any different than the private sector employees that are actually, that they're serving? I mean, I don't.
That's a good question, but you know, you can pretty much ascertain from this last paragraph on the front page, if there is a maximum 90-day waiting period, private sector is gonna take that 90 days, because they're not gonna wanna pay it until they have to. And, you know, I agree with Commissioner Kern, it's something that we can say, hey, look, you've only got X number of days waiting period. And right now, you know, if you investigate the insurance coverage in the private sector right now, the county has an awesome program. I mean, for the employee share, for the waiting period we had, for what it covers, for the $700 you get to pay, you know, that kind of thing, it's a very, very good benefit.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find anywhere that's got any better insurance than what the county has to offer, and it's by far a lot better than state that
Yeah.
moves on.
You know, the insurance that's out there, and I can speak for instance, I work for Apple, and Apple had insurance that is unbelievable. It cost me next to nothing, and I had a knee replaced for $200 out of pocket. You know, it was, but that's a huge, huge company that can do things like that, so.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question too.
Yes, sir.
Concerning, if I come on, and probably this would be directed to either any of the department heads, in the fact that when I hire in, and when I go over the insurance program, who introduces the insurance to me?
You come to the county mayor's
County
office
mayor's
as
office.
an employee like yours.
County mayor's office.
That's good.
Teresa Couch would do that. And that's, you know, the other part of this is Teresa, by default, takes on a lot of HR responsibilities, and she's really not a human resource person. We don't really have a county HR person, but, you know, there are people in this office take on responsibilities of HR person by default.
I asked that question in due respect to all department heads of not knowing how this came about, to make sure that each employee was consistent in the way this insurance was offered to
Yeah,
explain.
they go to Teresa.
Now, Tom, as far as explanation of benefits and stuff like that, you know who Mr. Trout is.
Oh, yeah, I know him well.
Everybody has got his direct number, and I might say something about Mr. Trout. If you've got a question, if you're sitting in the doctor's office or wherever, if he's not in a meeting, he will get right back to you or answer his phone immediately to ask your question. So he's kind of the, I guess, the HR person of, but as far as doing the initial setup of paperwork, they come to the mayor's office.
That was my question, Mr. Thacker, the reason, because I'm sort of biased toward Mr. Trout. I've employed him for about 25 years prior to this, so, yes, he does a beautiful job.
Yeah, I don't
That
think-
was my only question, was the consistency in the way this was explained to employees.
Mhm.
Mr. Chairman, I put form a motion 60 days, we leave it as it stands for 60 days, as the resolution.
So you're making a motion that we present this resolution
Like it is, yeah.
as written. Got a motion on the floor from Commissioner Fields. We got a second?
Second.
All right, we got a second from Commissioner Albus. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, well, we'll get this on the schedule for the March meeting. And, you know, of course, it's gonna have to pass the whole commission before it becomes effective, and, you all, as we've had here, there's gonna be a lot of questions, so be prepared. To all to chime in on that. be bashful. Okay, now, everybody buckle in. Because what we're gonna discuss next is a revised salary scale. And I've got a document here that I worked on gathering information from department heads, from other places, that is hopefully something that we can use as a basis for a salary scale that's going forward. Let me background some of this. Obviously, we want to be fair to all the employees in the county with a fair salary. We want them to be recognized for their years of service. We want to present something that's workable and fair to everybody. Back in 2014, there was a salary scale put in place, and you have a copy of it back several pages in this. It's the only one with yellow markings on it. At that point, all the jobs in the county that are funded through the general fund and fall into this scale were put in a grade, which you also have a document of on toward the back of this. Every position has a pay grade. So we've got an advantage in that pay grade scale is not that old. It will have to be looked at and revised as we go along, but all the work on that has already been done. Those positions are in that pay grade scale. The current scale has a minimum, and we can look at Holly's issue as kind of an example of this. It has a minimum quartile, a Q1, a midpoint, a Q3, and a maximum. As I understand it, talking to department heads, the way they were told to operate using this scale is people are hired, your employees are hired in at the minimum annual, and if there's any variation, they have to come to the personnel committee, which is exactly what Holly did. Then, as they go along, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, that you can move up to Q1 as far as salary goes when you've hired somebody in. There was no indication that you move somebody up a quartile because of years of service or because of their level of service or their certifications or anything else. So it was a little bit confusing as to how people could move up in this salary scale. And in fact, unless somebody was already making a salary that was in one of these quartiles, they were told that they cannot move up past Q1. Is that correct?
That's what you couldn't, yes.
Okay.
Anybody that was above Q1, between Q1 and maximum, if you fell anywhere between there, you was on scale.
They were on the scale, but anybody that was hired in could not go past Q1. Is that correct, Nancy?
That's correct.
Okay. So, our challenge here is that, in my opinion, after looking at this and knowing some things about salary scales and so forth, this probably was intended for employees to move through this up to Q3. Let me explain. The minimum on most, I'm gonna say, private sector salary scales is where you're hired in at. And then as you gain experience and you do a good job, and through the years of service, you go to the next quartile. And then midpoint represents the market value of that particular salary grade. So once you get to midpoint, you're making what everybody else in a similar position should be making. to go to Q3, you have to demonstrate some exceptional skills or some certifications or the ability to do the job better than anybody else can. And then your department head should have been able to move people to midpoint in Q3. And in effect, to maximum, if you've got, a Superman employee. But they are sticking with what they were told to stay in Q1. And again, anybody else that was on the scale is there on that scale and not able to move up salary wise. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So, the other challenge would be is that this is public sector and everybody wants to give their employees as much as they possibly can. So left alone, everybody in every salary grade would eventually go to maximum because you want to give them what you can potentially, possibly give them. And to move people up, years of service should have been considered, how effective they were in their job should have been considered, et cetera. So, to kind of give us a more equitable way to move people up in steps instead of in quartiles, the new quote-unquote salary scale was developed by the department heads with some assistance, I guess, from somewhere. So what we're doing, or what we're thinking that could be done, is to leave the 12 salary grades in place, and then as people move up in years of service, they would get a step raise. And the sheriff's department already does this.
Yes.
And it just hasn't been really considered here to do that. But my question to the department heads at one point was, why should they, just because they've got years of service, why should they get a raise? If they're not performing, why should they get a raise? And I think that the explanation there is, this is kind of self-correcting. If you got somebody that's do a step raise and they're not doing their job, that falls on the department head to take care of that, either through termination or through some sort of corrective action. So instead of, and again, we don't have an HR person, the department heads aren't HR people. They do their job, and really if it were me, without any background in personnel, I would struggle to put somebody on, let's say, an annual performance plan, and here's what we have to do. That takes a lot of work, and what we're trying to do is take some of that work out of it and be fair in moving people up as they go along. So as you can see on the new salary scale, there's 10 steps, and it functions on what we're calling a Q3 top out, so that people really have to be there a while to get to the maximum on this particular scale. It uses the same pay grades as were laid out before, with all of the jobs on it, and that's on the next to the last page. And let's keep in mind that the issue is, this has come up in the commission meetings every budget cycle. And everybody knows that the current scale is basically broken. It's not been used. It's not been, the numbers on it haven't changed since 2014. They should have moved up every year with the cost of living allowance, but they haven't been. And that's kind of, people are stuck in their salary range. So if we translate everybody over to this new scale, yes, it's gonna cost money. I mean, there's no question, we all knew that when it came up in the commission meetings, that this is gonna cost some money. And Eric was real diligent about putting together what the cost differences were, what the actual cost of it is going to be. And with that Q3 top out, there is, hold your breath, a total increase of $514,659.55. There's a breakdown here by offices, there's lots of different breakdowns here. But let's keep in mind that there are ways to fund this, one of which would be to ease this in over a 3-year period. So next year, it would cost us a third of that $514,000 to move people up. You're gonna move them up a year at a time till they get, over 3 years, till they get to their actual pay scale figure. But let's also keep in mind that our job as a personnel committee is not to figure out where that money's gonna come from. Our job is to say, you asked us to fix the salary scale, and here's what we think will fix it, and pass this on to the budget committee. It's gonna be tough. I mean, there's, to find even the 171,553 that it's gonna take to move this in 1 year, will be tough. The other things in here that I wanna explain is, if this goes into effect, if any scale goes into effect, there needs to be an annual follow-up on moving those figures with the cost of living allowance. And I put a scale in here on cost of living allowance. A lot of people that I run into say that, okay, cost of living allowance went up 3% this year. So it's 3% every year. It's not. It is based on the cost of living adjustments that are made by the Social Security Administration. Some years it's 3, where's that in here? Right here. Some years it's 3, as you can say, back in 1980, it was 14.3. Some years, 2009, 2010, it was 0. So a lot of times when we talk about, let's give them a cost of living allowance raise, we say 3% because we just pulled that figure out of the air. But I would suggest that we look at Social Security cost of living adjustments, add that to the scale every year as a follow-up. What else did I want to say before turning you on to loose on questions? I really commend Eric and the department heads for helping me with this and helping me understand this. And basically, this is something we've tried to do for a couple of years, and it just kind of goes by the wayside. And we've still got a bunch of employees. We talk about Commissioner Carter about how we throw things out there that we have to come work for us. And when Nancy hires somebody in her office, she hires them at that rate, and that's it. You're stuck. Well, where are I going to be in 5 years? Well, right there at that same salary. So that's my spiel. I probably left something out. It's up for you all to discuss at this point.
I tell you what, I commend you, Eric, who put this together. I have personally, as a commissioner, struggled with understanding this salary scale, and I might be just completely stupid. I've struggled to figure out how to understand this since I've been a commissioner. And I'm sitting here and I can tell you right now how it works now. I mean, just from looking at this, what you just said. And whoever you guys have put this together, for my benefit, thank you. Because really, I mean, every time somebody starts talking about this scale, I mean, I kind of know what's going on, I kind of know what they're talking about, but I'm like, I don't understand this step and the grade, and I don't understand how it works. I mean, this is good.
You all have anything to add?
I just want to make a statement. I mean, you've got general fund employees that have essentially been 5 years without a raise due to this 2014 pay scale, 5 years. They have gotten some cost of living adjustments, which is not a raise. We just had a discussion about treating all employees in the county the same with this insurance situation that we've got going on. And I would just ask you all as a committee and to pass on to, the total commission, if we're gonna treat all of our employees the same, let's put these employees who are 5 years past a raise on a compensation scale that will give them some incentive to stay here and work in our county.
And if we do the 3-year implementation of it, they won't get it all at once, but
Right.
it'll be something compared to the nothing that they've been getting for 5 years.
Mr. Chairman, I would come in and say, I like this plan. It's been my experience too many times dealing with boards, a lot of time, and I think Commissioner Fields alluded to that lots of times people just throw out a raise because they don't understand and want to just give them a raise. I think this is well implemented. I also would like to go back and address the department heads. I mean, you people are there with these employees every day. You know who's performing, you know who's not performing. And I don't see a problem of calling that individual out. But what we're doing, I feel this way, the biggest asset this county has is its employees. And we have to take care of them. I see some of these scales, and I would be embarrassed to offer you that kind of money to come to work. You have to think in terms of if I was the only member of the family working, and I had 2 or 3 dependents dependent on me, at some of these salaries, you're looking at, I'm gonna be getting aid somewhere else. And we have to think about terms of that. In other words, if we look at the total picture, we're paying it one way or the other in some form. And why not address it and keep good employees and leave it to the department heads to say, hey, Kern, you're not doing your job. You're gonna be out of here. Because that's the voice we gotta look at. I understand the other side too. But if you look at it in reality, I like this.
Well, in some of the discussions I've had with department heads in putting this together, most of the public thinks everybody that works for the county is overpaid. It's just, everybody over there is just rolling in the dough. And if you look at this, they're not. Yeah, rolling in the dough. But this is basically public record, and, not that we want to, publish this, but if you really want to know what a pay grade at a certain level of experience is making, it's there. And I don't think it's out of line whatsoever as far as pay goes. Yes, it's gonna cost us some additional money, but we've got to get back in line with what you're saying, entice people to work for the county, entice them to stay, have them know that they can work through this salary pay grade as they go along.
You create a situation where all I'm gonna do is come to work and get by. Let him do it.
And understanding that you got a raise coming when you've been here so long, or when you've done, your job helps a lot too. If you come to work and you've got something to work for, like Tom said, if you got nothing to work for, you're gonna go look somewhere else, no matter how much you like your job.
I don't feel like you get performance when you have any employee that is doing his job to the best of his ability and looking over his shoulder all the time, looking for better things. I have no problem with any employee, if they can better themselves and everything, say, I'm proud you're here, and go for it.
Absolutely.
But it's tough whenever you have an employee sitting here and saying, well, I'm just making ends meet, but anybody know, I'll go whatever. And they spend a lot of time unknowing that we as employers don't realize of seeking employment somewhere else.
Eric, do you have anything?
I think it's did pretty good, Mark. I think this would help to get everybody back on a level playing field and treat everybody fairly. I think that's the biggest objective of all those office holders is they want their employees treated like everybody else.
Mr. Chairman, if we approve this pay scale, are you suggesting that the COLA be part of the pay scale every year?
Yes.
Whatever, if 1 year we come up with 14%, you're saying we'll give them a 14%
Yes.
COLA rate?
yes, I don't anticipate that happening, but,
Well, I mean, you're
It-
setting yourself up for it.
well, I know. You know,
Budget restrictions still.
you know, we, as a personnel committee, we would decide what that percentage would be. I would suggest that, you know, a guideline of the COLA, increase. But, you know, that's not saying we have to do that.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand. Each year we'll look at the COLA and determine if we give them.
See, this is not a policy set in stone, but I think you're onto something there. That we, you know, we should be able to, using what Social Security Administration says is cost of living increase, we should be able to say, yeah, that's what we wanna do. Or, you know, if it goes way out of line, then yeah, we probably ought to not have to do
What I'm
that.
trying to say is it, will it be set in stone, we'd have to do that, or would the county commission just add it?
I think the county commission should vote on it. Using that as the guideline, and, you know, if it's within reason, that's what we need to do, because, yeah, I don't think, most of the time, your private sector is not gonna give you 14% COLA.
About 3%.
Yeah, so I mean, we could say, cost of living as presented by the Social Security Administration, up to 3%, and then anything above that, we can do it that way too.
We can have to approve it, anything above it, you know, you have to, it's gonna be approved or something, you know?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I've been in contact with the Appalachian Power on the, expansion project out in Stanley Valley.
Mhm.
It's projected to bring in right around $2 million. I spoke with the lady 3 weeks ago, and she said it's on schedule. And she said right at $2 million that we will be taking in the first of next year, not this year. I wouldn't have a bit of problem with half of it going for the county employees raise, but I'd like for a certain percentage of it to go toward reducing this wheel tax.
I understand your point, Commissioner Alvis, and, you know, I agree with you. However, that's a budget committee issue versus a personnel committee issue, in my mind.
If we get $2 million, this will be a fourth of it, so there'll still be money.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, Chairman, but it's, when you're talking 514,000 here, and this.
Over a period of 3 years.
Yes. We're working, so if we followed up on this today, it would cost us what, 200,000, 180?
It's in here, 171,553. Right, I mean, don't hold me to that exact figure, because as Eric and I talked, there could be somebody that's getting ready to go to a different pay grade, a different step. You know, there may be a few dollars difference, but that's a good working figure when Eric and I got together and looked at this.
Mayor, where do we stand at on our money in the general fund to come up with this what was it, 180?
171.
Or,
Still too early in the process to tell you that.
And this is, you know, we're not saying here, spend $171,000. We're saying, this is our recommendation to the budget committee. Let's see if you all can find a way to fund it. But we agree that this is something that needs to be done.
I agree. We need to, and I strongly agree with you in the same as eliminating that wheel tax also. Part of it.
Yeah, and I think the budget committee is taking the AEP into consideration and some other things, but, you know, the budget committee is in good hands, and they're working on some stuff right now.
I agree.
Entertain a motion to, pass this on to the budget committee.
Second motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Fields, second by Commissioner Kern, to pass this on to the budget committee. And, I will do that, and, because I'm ex officio on the budget committee anyway, so I'll be there to explain it when they take it up. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I recognize you every time I see you.
You're a good man. Reading
No,
the-
that is when I see you.
Reading the local paper today was very disturbing when I saw a non-elected office holder in the county can sue, and we have to foot the bill. I know it's mandated that if an elected office holder sues, that we have to pay the legal aspect of it and expense. But I've got a problem paying $23,000 for a fruitless lawsuit that was just taken upon and done. And the statement I read concerning Bobo's article, the statement was made that it's not coming out of my budget. And her budget is $423,000. She says it will come out of the general fund in the legal line item.
Yeah, that's a touchy thing, and the response from the county attorney is that the county is obligated to pay it, or would be sued. There is no, as it is now, there's no restriction on, because the Phillipses are brothers, they had to go get another attorney. There's no restriction on who they go get or how much they cost. They're just incurring costs in a roundabout way for the county, because the county is responsible to pay that. And that's something else that I'm not sure it's the personnel committee's responsibility or whose, and I'm kind of looking at how this got to go, but we can't, as a county commission, say, you have to go to this attorney and spend this or less than this. They have the choice, as it stands now, to go with anybody they want to. And really, we can't make a rule that says they have to go to X attorney. But I think we could probably put something out there that says, we strongly suggest that if you're going to incur expense that the county's gonna pay for, that it be passed by at least the county mayor or the commission as a whole, as far as keeping, there's not a whole lot we can do about this one, but we can go forward. And where it's gonna come out is, Eric, I think I'm right on this, 101-51900-332.
That's correct.
Okay, that's a line item that's titled legal notices, recording and court costs. And right now, there's an allocation of $3,000 in there. So there's gonna have to be a budget amendment to move some money from somewhere to that line item to pay those attorney's fees.
Well,
And I understand what you're saying, Dean, I really do.
is it true that she's planning on retiring at the end of June?
That's what the statement that she's made, I don't think it's made official.
And I should let it be known first, I called her office this morning to invite her here today, and she's out of town. I'm not blindsiding her, I wanted to be here to answer these questions. If she's planning on retiring in June, I'm calling on her to resign and take her last 2 months' salary and apply toward this $23,000 that the taxpayers is going to have to foot the bill on. And you said there's $3,000 in that line.
$3,000 in that line
To
item.
pay the $23,000.
Yes, sir.
We got a problem when you can run out and hire any attorney you want to in the United States and stick it to the taxpayers in the county.
When we're already paying one.
Yes, when we have a county.
But
attorney.
the issue is, it's TCA code, TCA 212-109.
I know.
That, where the county is responsible to fund the operations of the election commission. If it fails to do so, the election commission can actually sue the county to compel appropriation of necessary funds. And then, if that happens, we're responsible for those attorney fees when they sue us for that. So it just piles up and piles up.
I think it's just wrong. That
I totally
you
agree.
answer to 3 people, the board, the majority of the board, 3 people, instead of the 12,000 voters of this county. That's another reason why that should be put back on the ballot for the voters to make their
sense right there. It is a good reason to put it back on the ballot.
We're gonna have to cough up $20,000. And her budget is $423,000. Her salary is $77,000. I think if some of them had to start paying it themselves, they might not be so quick to run out and hire these out-of-town attorneys. When we have one,
And that came up in a city meeting, and I explained that to the budget committee last time. She was here talking about this whole issue. And it came up and I explained to, at that point, I had to remain kind of neutral because I'm on the board of mayor and alderman and also county commissioner. But, you know, she was sort of warned that, you know, why do you go to Knoxville or somewhere and get a high dollar attorney versus there are plenty of attorneys here in Hawkins County that would take that on.
yes.
And unfortunately, TCA code says we don't control that as a commission.
Well, do we control the other office holder? Do they have a right to go out and hire an attorney?
Yes.
Well, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it, so I'll just say that.
Well, they're directed to use the county attorney unless there's some sort of issue like conflict of
And the
interest.
same, Mr. Quantz, there's a lot of things that we as office holders probably don't agree with, but it's law, and the only way, the first step is at the state level to get all that changed. I mean, there's things that we have to do in our office I don't agree with, but the law, you know, makes us do it.
I understand, Mr.
Right.
I think she needs to pay this herself.
I don't know where to go with that, Commissioner Reynolds. You know, other than if we're going to take on doing some guidelines, we need to put one in there that strongly suggests the attorneys that the expenses need to be reviewed before they're taken on, if we're gonna be responsible for them. But by TCA code, we can't.
Our hands are tied.
Our hands are tied.
I understand.
Anything else on that? Anything else to come before the committee?